Welcome in, everybody. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel, who's out at DKR this morning. Just finished Steve Sarkisian's weekly press conference on Monday morning. CJ, welcome in. This is the press conference edition of On Texas Football, brought to you by our friends over at duckcamp.com. Christmas time coming around. Make sure you check out their gear, duckcamp.com. We'll have more on them in a little bit. CJ, before I get to you and the Longhorns win over Arkansas 20-10. We first want to hear from Texas head football coach Steve Sarkisian and his comments immediately earlier today.
Went on the road Saturday. We're the only undefeated team on the road in conference play. And so I think it speaks volumes to how difficult it is to go on the road and win. I credit our guys for playing the way they played, and obviously, defensively, we had a fantastic game. I think Jade Barron was Alfred Collins was the defensive lineman of the week, and who I don't think is getting near enough credit nationally for how good he's playing football right now for us. I mean, Alfred is playing a fantastic brand of football. Hayden Connor getting the offensive lineman of the week. I think that's now our fourth offensive lineman that's gotten player of the week. So, proud of our guys and just proud of the way they're working. And as I told them today, I think this is the biggest game of the season coming up. Kentucky's a really good football team. They have played their best football against the best teams they've competed against, whether it been Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee. I mean, they've played really well. I got a ton of respect for Coach Stoops and the job he's done. So looking forward to the challenge and looking forward to celebrating Senior Day. A lot of these guys have done so much work for us and have been such catalysts for our culture and what we do. And so to celebrate them, looking forward to that and looking forward to the opportunity to play Kentucky Saturday. Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's great examples, right? And whether it's a Jade, an Alfred, a Vernon, Jake Majors for that matter, a lot of these guys that were here when we got here, and then a lot of these guys that signed in December, and then I got the job in January, the Gunnar Helms, the Baron Sorrells of the world. And so I'm really appreciative of these guys because it's hard to get a culture the way you want it. I'm not saying the last one was wrong, right, and different. It's just what we were looking for, and these guys bought in. And when it got difficult, year one, year two, they didn't jump off and go somewhere else. They stayed the course with what we were trying to do. And so super grateful for these guys, and I owe a ton to them. And, I get a little emotional about this stuff because without this group, we wouldn't be where we are. And so I'm like I said, I'm very grateful and thankful for them.
Hey, CJ, he's right about the culture and it changing, and whether he said it or not, whether or not the culture has changed and what it was before. Tom Herman fired earlier today at Florida Atlantic. So, look, we can talk about culture all you want. The University of Texas apparently moving in the right direction at this point in time. He mentioned those seniors, CJ, and that was a big piece of the puzzle for him. Among those seniors for the Longhorns, Hayden Connor wins Offensive Lineman in the Week in the SEC. Alfred Collins, Defensive Lineman of the Week in the SEC. Jade Barron, Defensive Player of the Week in the SEC. All seniors. Tell us a little bit about what else Sark had to say about those guys today.
Yeah, how impactful have those three been? Of course, Sarkisian speaking highly going into Senior Day this weekend, to be able to honor those guys, to give them the recognition that they deserve. But more than that, I mean, we see each and every one of them. 11 of them made the trip to Arkansas in 2021. 9 of them are starters. 3 of them just received honors from the SEC for their performances over the weekend. We'll start with Hayden Connor because he becomes the 4th Texas offensive lineman to receive SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week honors for the season. Pretty significant. That kind of leads into what we believe this offensive line would be coming into the year. And for that to be the case going into the final 2 weeks of the regular season certainly bodes well. Jade Barron, I mean, what more can we say about him at cornerback? The selfless transition from nickel to safety to corner. We've seen him all over the field. He only sat for one play on Saturday, saw several snaps inside the box, interception sack, 2 TFLs. all while the Jim Thorpe Award representatives were present and obviously received some recognition as the Defensive Player of the Week. And then, Bobby, I believe you and Jerry and Blake talked about it on Coffee and Football this morning. I don't know if there's anybody in this Texas program that's earned more money over the last month and a half, 2 months than Alfred Collins for his performance, the game-sealing forced fumble. He had a 12-yard sack as well on Taylor Green, Player of the Week on the defensive line in the SEC. Credit to Vernon, and these guys right now are bridging the gap into what Sarkisian hoped this team and program would be into what it is today, and it wouldn't be possible without the three of them.
Yeah, Collins, it looks like, CJ, if he continues on this pace, is going to have 50 tackles this year from the defensive tackle position. That's a hell of a lot of tackles from a defensive. I'm here to tell you that's doing some real work. Neither Byron Murphy nor Tavondre Sweat had that many a year ago, just to give you an idea of his productivity. Sark talked a little bit about him and his development. Sark also talked about other seniors that he was really thankful for. Gunnar Helmy mentioned David Benda. I talked about that this morning. David Benda has been usurped in the starting lineup by Lianga Lafau, right? Well, on the game during the game on Saturday, the person right next to Steve Sarkisian hugging him as Texas sealed that game was David Benda. That culture of these seniors and the guys that he's mentioning are big-time importance and have really led the change to where in the last 2 years, Texas is 21-3 in games right now. I want to add one other thing. Sark also mentioned what a big weekend it is ahead for Texas because this is senior week for the Longhorns and all of those seniors we just mentioned. Mo Blackwell's another one as well. Tell us what Sark had to say, CJ, as it relates specifically to the Kentucky game coming up.
This is the biggest game of the year for the Texas Longhorns, Bobby. Those are the words mentioned several times by Steve Sarkisian this morning during his press conference. And whether you believe it or not, this is a game in which Texas has to get up emotionally for, right? You just went on the road to Fayetteville. You're looking ahead to Texas A&M. Kentucky's played a couple teams very close, right? They have a win over Ole Miss. They lost to Georgia by 1. This is a team that you can't take for granted. And right now it's being instilled that this is the biggest, most important game of the season for the Texas Longhorns. You could argue why? Well, it's the next one. It's the one that's keeping Texas from where it wants to go. And Texas coming into practice this weekend, this morning, it was a light practice. They were on the field, but they're all steam ahead towards this being the most important game remaining on the schedule, of course, until the next one. But right now, that's kind of the message being instilled, and the team is certainly taking note of that.
All right, I want to talk about a couple other things that Sark had to say, as well as the A&M game time being announced before we move forward. CJ, I want to say thank you to our sponsor. That's Duck Camp. Duck Camp gear is made for the people that live for the moments out there where there are fish to catch, birds to hunt, time to kill, football to watch. This pullover I'm wearing right now, straight from the Duck Camp shelves. They like doing all of that stuff, so they built a company centered on it, based in Austin and dedicated to giving people best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel. From opening day to game day, they've got you covered. At Duck Camp, they believe you can't just sit around and wait for adventure to come to you. You have to get out there, stay out there, and make the most of every second. Here's the great season, y'all. Yes, hunting and football. Shop hunting gear at duckcamp.com. Good stuff there. All right, CJ, I mentioned that the A&M game time. It is set for a 6:30 night kick on Saturday. 2 weeks from this past Saturday. All eyes are going to be on the Longhorns and Aggies, as it should be. Lone Star Showdown on ABC. Big-time matchup for the rivalry renewal after 13 years gone missing. That game is lining up. And both teams, by the way, doing their part to make this game important. Both the Longhorns and Aggies are the only two SEC teams with one loss at this point. All right, CJ, looking a bit back to what what Sark was talking about for the Kentucky game. He talked a little bit about injuries and what's going on there. He gave us an update on 3 different guys. Go through those, please, for everyone.
Yeah, we'll start with Mo Blackwell. He did not play in Fayetteville against Arkansas, dealing with a bit of a hamstring. He said he's hopeful to get the senior linebacker back on the field this weekend. Of course, Blackwell did not play last week, so
a bit of some rest and recovery time in between. We'll get updates whether or not he was practicing or not today and tomorrow on TexasFootball.com. But to the two guys that did play and that did get a bit dinged up, Jaden Blue, running back, was seen in a sling after the game. Sarkisian said that he's hopeful to get him on the field as well. And DeAndre Moore, a bit of a foot injury that sidelined him after just about 5 snaps on Saturday. Right now, Blue was on the field to practice on Monday. Right now, Moore was limited, but right now, Sarkisian kind of anticipating having both of them on the field for Saturday, but they'll be monitored all the way up until then.
Yeah, Blue back at practice. DeAndre Moore, we thought was a hip, and he said foot. So that was one thing I wanted to go back over there as well. All right, CJ, one of the more interesting things that we talked about it with Rod Babers in the second watch with Rod Babers. You asked Steve Sarkisian earlier today about his use of 12 personnel this year and why he hasn't broken out the jumbo 12 package with Malik Ogbo as much. It was very interesting what Steve Sarkisian had to say. Explain it to folks.
Yeah, I saw 40 snaps from Juan Davis this past Saturday, and I look at Gunnar Helm's snap sheet, and it says he didn't miss a snap. So what does that tell me? There was 40 snaps with Texas and 12 personnel against Arkansas, whereas we haven't necessarily seen that many 12 personnel snaps in any year under Steve Sarkisian. As a result, we've seen the 6-man jumbo offensive lineman, whether it be Andre Karich coming in year one or Malik Ogbo the last 2 years. We've not seen that at all this year. I asked him, basically what's kind of been that philosophical change? Has there been one? Or is it just preferable to get 2 tight ends on the field in a given game? And that was the answer right there, And one thing that Sarkisian credited was with the way that Gunnar Helm attacks blocking off the edge, he acts as a jumbo offensive lineman that you can then run into a route or you can use in the passing game more so than you would be able to with a Malik Ogbo or a Nato Umeozulu or whoever you would be using as that 6th offensive lineman. He takes care of the C gap out wide, which allows for Texas to be more versatile with another Juan Davis or a different tight end in that package, or Amari Niblack, if you will. So that essentially tells me, hey, they have a lot of confidence in the blocking ability and the bridge between the passing and the running game from Gunnar Helm to be able to utilize him as that certified tight end / extra lineman in that package instead of having to bring on another 300-pounder. Because he said, again, with Juan Davis or Amari Niblack on the field, Bobby, opposing defenses have to account for the threat of them in a passing game. You don't necessarily have to do that when it's a jumbo offensive lineman in that package. So ultimately, it all comes down to the confidence that they have in Gunnar Helm to be a guy that can displace people in the run game and still provide some threats in the vertical passing game as well.
I tell you what, Juan Davis, another of those seniors, by the way, that Sark talked highly of today in the press conference, CJ, calling out that third or the reception inside the 10-yard line that Juan then went and made a first down on to get Texas a 1st and goal on that final touchdown drive. Sark very impressed with what the young man did for him there and said he just does what you ask him to do every single time. That's why you get 40 plays in a game or 40 snaps also as well. All right, let's talk a little bit about Quinn Ewers because Sark did take some questions on the Texas quarterback, asking about Quinn and the long game and his performance on Saturday. Sark, I wouldn't say he was defensive, but I think he tried to explain why he's not so concerned about Quinn and the deep ball at all times. Give people a sense of what you heard there. And I think you and I both picked up on the same thing.
Yeah, on top of going against the 3-high look in which it's designed to take away some of that space vertically down the field, Sarkisian said if they're going to provide the underneath, some of those intermediate routes, that's exactly where I want Quinn to be looking. Just get us down the field, protect the football, and Quinn did a good job of that on Saturday, not turning the ball over on the road against their Arkansas defense. But again, when you go against that 3-high look, it's difficult to find open space. And I think there's one throw specifically that you could point to and say in any other look from a secondary, that ball is completed. It was kind of that whole shot to Matthew Golden down the sideline going into the red zone in which Arkansas safety was able to come across, put a hand on the ball, force an incompletion. That's only incomplete in a cover 3-high look. But for Sarkisian to come out and say, hey, Quinn took care of the rock. He found where he was supposed to go. That's a sign of a mature quarterback. And I thought at the end of the day, for Sarkisian, and we heard it in the postgame,
after Arkansas, and we heard it again today, those final 2 drives for the Texas offense to go out there and say, we need a touchdown to go up 2 possessions, and we need to run out the clock to make sure that this game is won by us. The Texas offense did that. It was efficient per Sarkisian, and Quinn Ewers was kind of the engine that led that to becoming a possibility on Saturday.
I want to add this. He also talked about when Quinn goes deep, sometimes it's a called go deep, whether the guy's open or not, because he wants people to have to respect the underneath the underneath stuff, and it keeps those safeties back, maybe not on their heels, but at least respectful of what Texas might attempt to do down the field. And a week ago he hit on them against Florida. He did not do it against Arkansas, and that's going to be the things that happen at times when you have a quarterback like that. He also, I would say this about Quinn and everybody else. He was asked straight up, do you know if this is going to be Quinn Ewers' last home game? He said, look, I don't know. I haven't been asked. I haven't said anything. Of course, we think it's going to be. I think every media member thinks it's going to be Quinn's last one. But Sark said, look, I don't know. I think it was more of a throwaway answer, trying to move on because he didn't want to attack it right then. Obviously, Quinn most likely headed to the NFL, but it's important to note that the head football coach at Texas did address those things. All right, CJ, before we let folks go, anything else you want to take away or talk about based on what you heard from Steve Sarkisian in today's presser?
Yeah, I think ultimately the goal and the plan is set for Texas. This is the game you got to take care of before you look ahead. Because regardless of what else is going on in the SEC, regardless of how large that matchup will be against Texas A&M in 2 weeks, the focus should be on Kentucky. And Sarkisian said as well, he loves what Mark Stoops has done with that program, right? They've turned it into having NFL-level guys at every level of that defense. And, they're a scrappy team offensively. Normally, a really good running back, a really good running game. This year, they're a scrappy team. They'll stick around. But it's that defense with Deion Walker, Dumas Johnson at linebacker, and Maxwell Hairston at cornerback that you really have to be wary of because, hey, they held Georgia to 13 points. They defeated Ole Miss, who we just watched put up 100 yards or 100 points and 1,000 yards against Arkansas. They will play a stingy level of defense that Texas has to prepare for. Fortunately, it's going to be right behind me at DKR on Saturday, and Texas will have the high emotions of senior day, wanting to leave right and look ahead to what could be a quote-unquote playoff game in its own right against Texas A&M in 2 weeks.
If you're just now joining us, we're recapping Steve Sarkisian's press conference from earlier today. 2 quick side notes if you did not hear them yet. Texas A&M game time has been announced at 6:30 Saturday, November 30th. That's a big time prime time spot on ABC. That game will be coming. Also, former Longhorn coach Tom Herman has been fired as head coach at Florida Atlantic. That was expected after losing to Temple and former Texas assistant Stan Drayton on Saturday. Drayton himself was fired on Sunday. All right, CJ, we appreciate you there at DKR and each and every press conference week with Steve Sarkisian. You'll be back for the winning drive with Rod Babers and Coach Bob Shipley later today at 3 o'clock. For CJ Vogel and our producer, Matt Hutchison, thanks for watching, everyone. Hook 'em.